There are over 35,000 museums within the United States, welcoming over 850 million visitors each year. Did you ever wonder what goes on behind the scenes in museums, creating the displays and exhibits we all enjoy? Join us as we explore museums and their exhibits from the inside out. Hi, I'm Leslie Mueller. Welcome to Museum Access, the show that takes you to America's top museums to talk to the experts. Then we go behind the scenes to learn even more. We're in the foothills of the Santa Monica Mountains in Los Angeles, California, at the J. Paul Getty Museum. We're on 86 acres of landscape gardens and terraces. Its collections of European paintings, drawings, sculpture, illuminated manuscripts, and decorative arts are viewed by over 1.5 million visitors from around the world every year. Today we're going to visit the galleries of the Center for Photography. The Department of Photography was established in 1984 with works from the very beginnings of photography. This remarkable collection includes the masters of photography, such as Edward Steichen, Walker Evans, Edward Weston, Dorothea Lange, Robert Mapplethorpe, Andy Warhol, and many more. We'll learn about the evolution of the camera from a simple wooden box with a primitive lens to the first mass-marketed digital camera. Then we'll go behind the scenes to look at artifacts that are rarely on view at the museum. So are you ready to see the world through the lens of J. Paul Getty? Let's go. John, I can't believe what a stunning campus this is. This is gorgeous.
Yeah, the Getty Center is quite amazing, and is actually one of the most popular attractions in Los Angeles, and you can see why.
It's gorgeous. The architecture alone, tell me a little bit about the architecture.
The building was designed by Richard Meyer. The Getty Center opened in 1997. I believe it was one of Richard Meyer's first museum projects, and it was designed to take advantage of Southern California lifestyle, which is indoor-outdoor. And you can see when you go into the galleries, unlike some other museums where you may go inside and never see the light of day, here you're actually forced to go outside from the galleries from time to time.
Well, it looks like it's set up in different pavilions or different buildings for different types of art. Absolutely.
And when Richard Meyer designed it, he also designed it so that the building kind of frames the vistas and the views. So you'll see very clear framed images of the city and of vistas. And yes, the pavilions are organized chronologically with the earliest artwork in our North Pavilion and our most current, our most recent works in the West Pavilion.
Well, I'd like to learn a little bit about Getty himself. I know he was an avid collector. Tell me a little bit about his history.
So J. Paul Getty, in his day, was one of the richest men in the world. He may actually have been the richest man in the world. And he was an avid collector in particular areas. He collected Western European paintings. He collected decorative arts and antiquities. He was particularly a good collector in decorative arts and antiquities. The original museum is actually in Malibu, the Getty Villa. We now call it the Getty Villa, but that was his original museum that he built to house his collection. When his collection outgrew his home, he decided to build a museum that's modeled on the ancient Roman villa. And that became sort of the original Getty Museum. He actually, sadly, never saw that building. He passed away 2 years after it was completed, but never made it back from England to see the final building. But when the collection moved to here, we closed that building for 10 years to do a major renovation there. So now both sites are very new, very modern.
So let's talk about the collections that are here now.
Certainly. We collect in 7 areas: paintings, drawings, decorative arts and sculpture, photographs, antiquities, and manuscripts.
So collecting is still going on a yearly basis, correct?
we're very active
You are,
collecting. That's
yeah.
part of our mission. Our mission is to continuously keep collecting. But we do focus very much on high quality and important works, and also on works that are gaps in our collection.
That's just what I was going to say. Yeah.
Where we may not have, a good example by a certain artist. And then in photography, because we're collecting right to the present day, we're extremely active in collecting in photography.
Worldwide.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the collecting process. I'm not sure our viewers understand, or I understand. How does a museum go about looking for pieces to fill the gaps?
It depends a lot on the objects that we're interested in.
Okay.
So many times we're watching the auctions. We're obviously very attuned to what dealers have and what is in the dealers' collections.
Yeah.
We try and maintain strong relationships with collectors to understand sort of what their intentions are with their works down the line. We obviously hope for donations of works and
Sure.
donations of collections.
Now, I see a lot of children here. I mean,
Yes.
it's a great museum for kids to be in because there's so many outdoor spaces and fountains and whatnot. But what type of programs are there for kids?
We do a lot of program for kids. So for
Yeah.
example, during the week, we actually have a very aggressive program in terms of funding school visits for schools. As you can
you fund
as you
them. That's
know,
great.
a lot of schools have had to
in.
cut bus funding in order to bring their kids on field trips. So we've actually stepped in and actually support bus funding to bring school children here. And we also have gone to a new program where every visit is led by a docent.
Oh.
So that's where it kind of starts. And it's actually quite wonderful because we've noticed over the years that many of those young people come back with their families. And it empowers these young children to sort of
Yeah.
feel like they know this is their museum.
Now we're going to show mom and dad.
Exactly. And they bring them on tours. They actually point out works of art to their parents. And it's a real source of pride for them.
Well, how many of us started our interest in museums by
Absolutely.
going to museums when we were kids?
Absolutely.
Children can learn and play in the Getty Center's family room. It features 5 activity coves and treasure hunting walls. It's bursting with cool things to see and do. What a great way to introduce children to the world of art. During our visit, we were able to see a special exhibit in the Center of Photography called In Focus, the Camera. So Paul, tell me a little bit about the photography collection here at the Getty.
It's one of the best collections of photographs in the world, with over 140,000 objects.
Oh my gosh.
There are 7 curators that tend to it and help to grow it and do research and make exhibitions and publications based on it.
Well, I know there's fragility involved and you have to be careful with lighting, and how do you deal with that?
We record the times that the photographs are on display, either here or out on loan. So we have a good record of how long they've been out and about.
That's interesting. Even when it's on loan, you're aware of how
That's
long it's
right.
been exposed.
And if something has been exposed a lot in a single year, we might give it a rest and deny some loans so that it doesn't get overexposed.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Well, tell me where we are right now.
Well, we're in the Center of Photographs in the exhibition In Focus the Camera, which I organized based on some gifts that we received from a local collector in 2007 and 2008. We were very fortunate to get over 100 cameras that this gentleman had been collecting since World War II.
Oh my gosh.
And I decided that we should have a survey of the very best, the highlights of that collection, starting with the daguerreotype and running through to the digital.
Oh my gosh.
So we have a span that runs from about the 1850s to 1994.
Now, I know they go from very, very large, like this one behind us. Talk to me about
Yes.
that, to very small. So,
That's a mammoth plate camera, and it was used in the 1860s and 1870s when there wasn't enlargement of photographs. So they needed large glass plate negatives in order to make the type of photographs that would compete with paintings that were displayed on the walls.
so if it was an 8 by 10 plate, that was as big as the photo could
Exactly.
be. I see.
It was a contact printing process where you would place the negative up against the actual paper to make the print. So it was a one-to-one relationship.
And I can imagine some of the areas they must have had to do this in. I thought I read somewhere that, some of these guys were doing it in the backs of covered wagons.
Yes, you had to take a tent with you so that you could process the negatives in a dark room, a mobile dark room.
Yeah, right.
And you had to be very careful not to break the glass. So some of these photographers traveled where there were no roads,
Oh, yeah.
or to Egypt where they had to put up with high temperatures and the wind and the sand and bugs.
Yeah. Oh.
So they were really intrepid.
And then would that plate be able to be used again?
Yes.
Okay, so you could remove whatever image was on it and reuse a plate.
You could do that, or you could bring the plates back after they were processed as negatives, and then do multiple prints back at your home studio in London or in Paris, let's say.
Well, I'd understood that even the government was interested in these photographers going out west so that people could see what the West looked like,
yes.
so people would settle, right?
There were governmental surveys of the West that certain photographers were hired to undertake.
Oh my gosh.
We're going from an optical device that's a precursor to the modern camera, which was invented in the 1880s, called the camera obscura, which was known to people since the Renaissance. But this particular version was created in the 1780s to the digital era with the first commercially marketed digital camera called the Apple QuickTake from 1994.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know looking at one of the cases that is supposedly historical, I remember using a lot of those as a kid.
That's right.
This
That's
is
right.
fantastic.
There were certain cameras that I had to put in because my family had those cameras, or my friends had those cameras.
They wouldn't forgive you if they weren't
Exactly.
included. And tell me
Exactly.
about the wall that you have here. You've got a great display wall of photographs.
In addition to showing the cameras, I wanted people to see people using cameras.
Wow.
And we have such a rich collection of artists, self-portraits, and people taking pictures of other people using cameras that I built a salon-style wall. The oldest picture is from 1856, and the newest picture is from 2016. In this case, we have two cameras that I'll point out. This is a daguerreotype camera, one of the earliest forms of photography. This particular camera was made in the 1850s as a daguerreotype camera, and then it was retrofitted to hold glass plates.
I see. And how big would the plates be?
The plates were about as big as the size of the box.
Okay.
And the way you would expose the negative was to remove the lens cap.
To let the light in.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And when you had done that, you put the cap back on to stop the exposure.
I see.
This one is a stereo camera, and this is from the 1860s, and it created small pictures that gave the effect of three-dimensional viewing when it was put through a specialized viewer, which we will see when we go to the study room.
I've always been curious about those because you see those quite often in antique shows and that it's a double image. So I'll look
Exactly.
forward to that.
Here we have the Kodak #1, which is from 1888, which revolutionized popular photography among the public.
Yeah, you can hold it in your hand.
Exactly.
Now.
And the idea was that it held 100 shots. And after you expose those 100 shots, you'd send the whole camera into the company.
Oh my gosh.
They would unload it, process the negatives, make the prints, and then reload it with film and send the whole package back to you.
Oh my gosh.
So
that was roll film. I'm
it was a
assuming
roll
you put
film.
it in and yeah, it would go from one
Exactly.
cartridge to another.
Then here we have an early press camera, and you can see what a huge monster it is.
Oh my God.
Imagine having to run to a fire to capture that with this heavy camera. One of the things that helped people was that a lot of the compartments are spring-loaded, so when you press a button, it would spring open to help you have greater speed.
Sure, and if you're a photojournalist, I can't even imagine
That's right.
lugging that around.
That's right. Over here, I wanted to point out this great camera. It's a Kodak Bantam Special from 1936. And I put it in the show because it was one of the most beautiful cameras in our collection.
It's very streamlined.
It has the Art Deco lines.
It does. Are those engraved or painted on there?
There's bits of metal that are through the enamel.
What? Wow.
And
That's
when you
really
press a
pretty.
button, the door of the lens opens and the camera can be pulled out, the camera lens.
Oh, how interesting. But that's a stayed lens. We're not into focal lengths at this point?
No, it's a fixed
It is what it
lens.
is, it's a fixed lens.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And moving on.
Then down here in this case, I put a camera that the kids will find fun, the Steinac wristwatch camera, which was a Cold War invention. It's from Germany, and you would wear this camera on your wrist, and while you were pretending to check the time, you could be making pictures. And the small disc that's here would hold 8 shots.
So this is basically a spy watch.
Exactly.
This Eastman Kodak camera was a spy tool designed by the Office of Strategic Services, the predecessor of the CIA. Resistance members and agents were able to conceal a small apparatus within an ordinary matchbox cover. With a discrete lens on the side, the camera could capture 30 images on 16mm film.
Everyone had the Kodak Instamatic 100 in the 1960s. And this camera was designed around the film cartridge because sometimes people would have trouble threading the film through the sprockets and making sure that it was properly inserted and ready to go. So there was only one way to put that film cartridge into the camera and close it. So it made taking pictures foolproof. And then, of course, we have the Polaroid, the SX70, which really was an innovation in terms of providing color pictures on the spot when people were ready to have them. We also put an example of a Polaroid. This is the painter Basquiat by Andy Warhol.
Another photographer in the Getty collection, Walker Evans, is one of the most influential photographers of the 20th century and a leader in the history of American documentary photography. Born into an affluent family in St. Louis, Missouri in 1903, he initially wanted to become a writer, but took up photography in 1928. He was best known for his work from the Farm Security Administration. His job was to document life in the rural South. As he embarked on the project, he noted, "This is pure record, not propaganda. No politics whatsoever." During this period, he used a large format 8x10-inch view camera. His refusal to romanticize poverty redefined documentary photography for generations to come. Frank images of the rural South were somewhat shocking to urban cultural audiences. In 1935, he created A Graveyard and Steel Mill in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It depicts the world of steelworkers whose lives begin and end in this town. The foreground is dominated by the large weathering cross, suggesting the structure that religion can provide for those living without privilege. In the distance, the smokestacks block the path to lives of comfort in the grander homes on the horizon. Walker Evans told the story of working-class America. He passed away in New Haven, Connecticut at the age of 71, but his revolutionary images will be firmly embedded in our collective memories for generations to come. Paul, I love being behind the scenes and kind of seeing the areas that not everybody sees. Tell me where we are.
This is the study room in the Department of Photographs. And people can make appointments to come and look at works that are in our collection but are not on view.
I see. And you've got, this looks very juicy, everything that's on the table here, but this, I think I've seen these before in antique shops. What am I looking at here?
This is a stereo viewer for viewing the stereo cards, which were very popular in the 1860s through till about 1910. They were a way that people got to entertain themselves and armchair travel around the world, kind of like an early form of entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. Show me one of the cards here. What is it? It's a double image of the same image? Is that the idea?
It's two photographs side by side that are almost the same. And when you look at it through the viewer, like this one, it appears to be 3D.
Oh my goodness.
The lenses merge the view into one, so you get a 3D image.
Okay, I have to take a look at this one. This looks interesting. So it's two images, because I've seen these at flea markets and antique shows, but I didn't quite understand how it worked. Oh gosh, you're right. Well, we've all been to 3D movies here, I'm sure. Yeah, but this is like the predecessor, isn't it?
That's right.
Well, did I see on this one, it looked like there were little lights in it, or
these are special because these are early French tissues, and that means that they're thin.
I see.
It's very thin.
Very fragile.
The pictures are pierced with pins and hand painted on the back, so you get color and you get light, especially when you hold it up.
And so these are examples, these are all different?
These are all different examples of paper, stereograph photography. There are even early examples of daguerreotype stereographs, which this is an example of here.
Wow, look at that case. That's quite something. Oh, it's on glass.
There's
my gosh.
A mirrored surface with glass covering.
Oh, that is so. Well, how fragile would that be? I'm surprised that these even have survived.
As long as you keep them away from the effects of pollution and air, they tend to stay pretty well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And below here I see, boy, I can't even imagine the cataloging that has to be done for every single item that's here.
It's
Talk
true.
to me about that.
We have a team of catalogers who help us record all the details about every object, and not every object has a known maker. Or a known location. So there's a lot of research that goes into creating these sheets, the information that we keep, so that it can be accessible to anyone who's doing research on a particular topic.
Let's talk about the importance of recording the collections that you have. I know, unfortunately, there have been fires at museums, and you just have to, I think it was a museum of Brazil, that lost all of their history, their artifacts.
Right.
What's the process?
Well, when things come in, they're, as a new acquisition, they're cataloged, they're photographed, so we have digital images of everything. There are condition reports that are made, and if any changes are made to the picture to improve its condition, it's re-photographed to show the before and after. So all these records are part of the archive of the museum that supports the actual physical objects.
So what do we have here?
This is a handheld stereo viewer that's quite beautiful. It's
isn't
wood
that pretty?
and metal.
Oh, look at that.
And
Can't you
would
see
put
people in their parlors?
Exactly. You can you put the stereo view here, and then you can hold it up to the light using this handle and look through the lenses.
I see. That's beautiful. It looks like it's engraved on the top,
It is.
too.
I think it's tin.
Yeah, it looks like, oh, and it's portable.
Yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. This museum is the legacy of an avid art collector, J. Paul Getty. He believed that art was a civilizing influence on society. He loved sharing his collection, And throughout his adult life, he made art available for the public's education and enjoyment. When he passed on in 1976 at the age of 83, his wishes were that his trust would provide the diffusion of artistic and general knowledge. I think he'd be pleased, don't you? Thanks for joining us on Museum Access, where every visit is an adventure. I'm Leslie Mueller. See you next time. Made possible by TFI Envision, the connection to conversion agency. Palomino Restaurant Group, 25 years of creative cuisine. ML Capital Partners, building the businesses of tomorrow today.